For those that don't know me, my name is Farah Farnese. I am the Senior Director of External Relations. I'll kind of be your guide MC throughout the day today. So you'll see me popping up, giving some updates, giving some context. There will also be additional trainings throughout the rest of the summer. We know that many of your staff are either getting onboarded or are new or may not have been able to join. So if there's any staff that really need additional support or additional training, we'll have those opportunities for them. So to kick off the do the formal kickoff, I'd love to bring up Shakima Fulmore Townsend, our President and CEO.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to see you all. I tried to get around the room to say hello and meet new faces. For those of you who don't know me, I am excited to lead the Philadelphia Youth Network and serve as the President and CEO with an amazing group of adults who believe in the potential of young people and who work every day in such dedicated and tireless ways in order to ensure that we have successful impact beyond our organization, and we want that impact to extend as supports to you as our partner organizations. We're truly thankful and grateful that you chose to partner with us, that you choose to serve the young people in your community, and that you choose to be a part of our PYN family. And we look forward to impacting young people themselves. We hope to equip them for a future that is filled with success and the ability to choose the best post-secondary path for them. And you play a vital role in that work for us. And ultimately, our job is to transform communities. And when we empower young people to take the space that we now hold, we are making an investment in a viable economic future, and that is a goal that we share. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been at PYN for 13 years, and why was I so excited about doing the welcome this morning? Because when I was younger, I always had the task of welcoming people at events, and you memorize the welcome poem and say it. And that was really probably one of my first introductions with public speaking, right, and communication. So I don't take for granted any form of instruction. I think that young people are building skills all the time, and we as adults are responsible for creating experiences where they learn. So in the spirit of my 8-year-old self, I'm going to share with you a welcome poem. May the excitement of today enthuse you. May its enchantment surround you. And may the fellowship that we share create happy memories and smiling, magical moments. I hope you hold on to the energy of today, the calm of today, the beautiful sunshine of today, because once we get started, we are on the roller coaster known as implementation for summer employment programs. And with that roller coaster, like any roller coaster, it's thrilling, it's exciting, but it can also be very scary. And so if this is your first summer or your, I think we're up to 15 under work ready, 16 under work ready, 16th summer, congratulations. So I don't think there's anyone here who did not know our vision, but a couple of years ago, we really asked ourselves important questions about why are we doing the work that we're doing, where we're doing it, with whom we're doing it, and the way that we're doing it. And for us, it boiled down to something very simple. Our vision is to alleviate poverty and inequity through education and employment. So the work that you do falls under both. You are teaching young people valuable skills about the world of work, and you're also reminding them of why it is important to excel academically through your interactions with them. Our process is designed to be developmentally appropriate, but also instructional in nature at every turn. We released a strategic plan 2 years ago, we're in our second year, called 2020 Vision, where we outline not only the data that is driving our work, but how we would move forward. And so for those of you who have never heard this, I say, access the full plan on our website. It is there. We are happy to share it with you. We had 3 goals. One of them is about building a system, and each of you are a piece to that system. Any individual organization in this room is great within their own right. You have excelled at the competitive bidding process. You have demonstrated with your results that you have the capacity to deliver excellent services time and time again. We have no doubt about that. But what I also know about this room is that we together are collectively more powerful than we are individually. And the Philadelphia Youth Network sought out to create a system of 20,000 opportunities. Because underlying our work is the belief that as long as young people have access to education and employment opportunities, they will be able to acquire and enhance the skills they need for the future. That was an increase of about 30%. Now, you say opportunities. I want to be clear. For us, it's about creating the landscape so that multiple different opportunities exist. We also believe that if young people have more than one opportunity, that's great. In fact, we want our system to be stackable, if you will. Over the last year, we created 17,020 opportunities together. That includes you. You are a part of our equation to help ensure that every year, minimally, there'll be 20,000 opportunities for young people to take advantage of when we're successful at this plan. Another goal of our strategic plan was to be innovative, right? When people talk about, anyway, people talk about innovation like it's just magical, right? Or that it just happens. And for us, we want to be very intentional when we choose to do something new. And our goal is to remove barriers to employment, whether they look like the challenges that come with young people who do not have I-9 supporting documentation, or they look like the biases in a hiring process. Our innovation incubation work spans different types of barriers, seeks to introduce new ways of doing the work, and to learn and to grow. So we set a goal of launching and scaling at least 3 pilots. We were fortunate in the very beginning of our strategic plan year, first year, to receive a lot of resources to try new things. And we've actually launched 8 of them. We're really excited about that. And one of them is in the process of sustainability, and we'll be looking to decide where we learned and where we will keep doing the work, and we're excited about that. And then lastly, the Philadelphia Youth Network has always been a partner nationally to many communities, but we wanted to be intentional about how we did that work moving forward. And so we seek to expand our work to 2 cities beyond Philadelphia in our strategic consulting role. What does that look like? It looks like a lot of the things that you experience and receive from us all throughout the year when it comes to training, technical assistance, and capacity building. But it looks like looking at communities who have similar demographics as we do, who have maybe have a similar structure, or maybe they don't, but want to learn from the results we've been able to have over our nearly 20 years of doing this work. And we want to be a value add, not just here in Philadelphia, but in cities beyond us. And so we are working, many of you may already know this, we're working in Detroit, and we had a little entry into Seattle to help them organize their resources, create new opportunities, build partnerships, enhance their own programming, and we're really proud of that. So what does the data look like? I am happy to share with you, you are the very first public group that we are sharing these results with. And part of the reason that is because you have been so instrumental in us achieving them, and we wanted to make sure that you got a chance to see not just your part in your provider report cards, but the part that you played towards the whole. You'll notice a couple of language changes. And I want to make this clear to you, because when we released the career development framework last year, we intentionally made some shifts within our organization to align all of our programs to that framework, to review the way that we support providers around the framework, as well as investors and legislators. And we also became really clear that the real divide is whether our experiences are short-term or long-term. Oftentimes you hear, we used to say things like summer and year-round. Well, it was a little misleading because we had programs that were happening at different durations, and really whether it happens in the summertime or not is actually not the most important part to an opportunity. So our long-term opportunity results. We were able to create 6,371 opportunities. Of those opportunities, we also had 479 young people attain a credential, and 1,140 of those young people enter into placements. And that could be a longer continuum of post-secondary options, from employment to additional training, longer term training, to traditional 2-year, 4-year experiences. We are excited to be able to create different access points for young people. And so for young people who need a longer term experience, we're happy that we're able to do that. And then young people who it's more beneficial to have a short term experience, we want to be able to provide those as well. So we've provided 10,185 opportunities along our short term continuum. And that includes the work that you are doing. So please give yourselves a round of applause. And every summer we measure what do young people think about their experiences and what they're learning. And 92% of them said that they experienced a connection with a caring adult. There is a significant amount of research around social emotional learning, brain development, and the role of a positive, the role a relationship plays in developing agency, a sense of community, future plans. And so I want to thank you for supporting all the adults within the system to be that caring adult for young people. 92% is a very high percentage point, and we love to see that be 100%, but I'm really excited that 92% of our participants felt that they made a connection with an adult in a positive way. 97% of the young people said that they were satisfied, and 96% of them said they were interested in further education. That is a critical data point for us because the data clearly tells us that the more educated you are, the more likely you are to participate in the labor market. Now, there are a lot of reasons for that. We don't challenge every reason for that. What we have done is say we want a coordinated system of opportunities that respond to differentiated needs that happen at different durations, and that young people can enter the system when they need and exit when they need and come back when they need. So the flexibility and the diversity in our program offerings are a critical part of partnering with so many great organizations. Some of our major milestones of last year, we were able to release our career development framework, and I know that there's lots of talk. We've seen it transform the way our educators are thinking about their role in teaching and learning, and we're also seeing the power that comes from both local, state, and national advocacy around what is the function of employment programs. We also were able to be a part of the Fueling Philadelphia's Talent Pipeline Engine. There's a lot of letters to that one, but if you have not seen the comprehensive citywide workforce development plan, I would like to share with you that youth are an important part of that. They are the future of our workforce, and there are specific goals around young people having access to career-connected education experiences, as well as creating career pathways for those young people who have graduated or achieved the secondary credential, achieved the credential, industry-based credential, and need support moving along the continuum. And those goals are there, and we're happy to be one of the strategic partners. We also have been able to project with Work Ready and Project U-Turn, two, I would say, initiatives, or you may know work that is organized around both of those things. With Work Ready, we've already created since 2003, 215,000 opportunities. So if you were here from the beginning, your number is certainly in that 1,000. And for Project U-Turn, we've supported 34,000 re-engagement opportunities. Here is what I would love for you to take with you today. I said this last year, and I'll say it again. We are in the and business, the education and employment business. We are no longer in a world where education can afford to operate in a silo and separately from the workforce development aims. And we're seeing both on a policy, a funding, and even a local level the need to both merge and redefine what we're doing in that lane. Your role is critical, because for many young people, you will be their first introduction to why education is important and how they can use that in their future. The way that you introduce them to your application process, the way you set standards, the way you support them in resolving challenges are all a reflection on their building knowledge about what it means to prepare for their future. That is an awesome, exciting, supreme responsibility. And we are happy to partner with each and every one of you to ensure that young people across the city have a consistently great experience. I want to issue to each and every one of you that we are also a learning organization. So when we make a mistake, when we have unintended consequences, when things happen in a way that we did not expect, our commitment is transparent communication. We're also committed to hearing back from you. So this is a personal invitation that I would extend to you, that any of us are willing to grow, learn from your experiences. So this is a two-way street, not a one-way street. Ultimately, the system of 20,000 is going to be built when we grab hands and we work together in order to create more experiences for young people. And I certainly think that they're worth every effort that we make in order to secure a promising future. And I know that I'm in a room full of adults who think the same, so thank you very much. I have the distinct pleasure, this is something else that I enjoy introducing people. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing to some and presenting to others Ms. Stephanie Gambone, who's our Executive Vice President. For those of you who don't know, Stephanie has been with our organization for 19 years, so she has certainly been present for a majority, if not 100% of those outcomes. And Stephanie was, early on, she has experience with our programs as the first intern, she will say. Listen, she can tell you about her first work-ready experience, and when you see her in the hallway, quiz her and ask her all the details. But I'm really excited that I get to call her colleague, I get to call her partner. She has been instrumental in helping to position the organization with funders. She's been instrumental in understanding the needs of our provider network and improving our services. And honestly, to some of you, she's probably been more behind the scenes than in front of the scenes as a result of her function and her work, but now she's responsible for a significant portion of how we deliver our work across the continuum. So we don't have so many schisms within our organization, and part of the reason why we could do that is because we are fortunate to have such a talented professional leader. So I will present Stephanie Gambone.
So Shakima stole the first 2 minutes of my remarks, but she probably did a far better job than I would have. So welcome everyone. Stephanie Gambone, as Shakima mentioned. I do often joke that I was one of the first work-ready interns. For those of you that know me for the past 19 years, that is actually impossible based on how old I am. But it's a fun story to see how the room reacts, because they usually look at me like, oh, they start to do the math, and they're not totally sure if that is true or not. But I have absolutely been around since Work-Ready started, and it's been a pleasure, and I've learned so much, and got to interact with so many young people and adults who are committed to this work over the past 19 years, and I'm really proud to just be here and be part of this work. So I have I have 2 jobs this morning. One, supposed to get you excited. I was going to do a dance and a song, and folks asked me not to do that. But I do want to get us excited about summer, and then talk a little bit about what you can expect, kind of big picture, as we think about our work together over the course of the next few months. Shakima mentioned a couple of things that I'm going to point to throughout my brief remarks this morning, but one was really around, that we're a community, we're working together, and we are impacting communities, we are impacting young people's lives. And there are a lot of people in this room this morning, and I want to get a sense of actually who's here. So bear with me for a minute. If you were in work, if you participated as a provider, and you've been doing this work at least over the past year, meaning you worked last summer on Work-Ready, raise your hand. Okay. If you've been doing it for at least 3 years, keep your hand up. 5, 10, We got amazing talent in this room. The expertise are the folks that are out here in the room. And so as Shakima mentioned, we want to learn from you. We want to hear from you. One more question, because usually and hopefully I'm right, so I'm taking a little bit of a risk. Has anybody in this room, were you actually a work-ready participant at one point? Wow. Thank you for continuing to work with us in this space. Your expertise is not only as an adult who is delivering services to young people, but you have a unique experience because you actually participated. So I just want to echo Shakima's comment that we really do want to have open communication and a dialogue. I had a chance to talk to some of you, not all, in the fall, and got some really amazing feedback. So I'm going to talk in a few minutes about how we heard you and some of the things that we're doing moving forward. But we really encourage all of you over the course of the next couple of months to maintain that two-way dialogue. We want to hear the great things that are happening. We also want to hear the challenges, opportunities for improvement, and how we can continue to work together. I want to ground us a little bit in why we do this work. Today we're going to do some pretty detailed work together around enrollment and eligibility and all the stuff that is super important to do this work. But I don't want to lose young people in this conversation. I'm going to ask for 1 or 2 people, that's it. You will all at some point over the next couple months have your 5 minutes of fame, and to be brief. If you don't mind standing up and tell us a story of impact with a young person, with a work site, something you learned yourself, but help ground us in why we are here and why we are doing this work together. So I'm going to call on people I know if somebody doesn't stand up. So hopefully somebody's willing to volunteer. Farrell, come around with the mic. Any volunteers? Terry? Okay, thank you. We got a volunteer. Terry, you're safe for the minute.
I'll be brief. It's actually not that brief. Hi everyone, I'm Kira. I definitely don't need a mic. I can find a room of 720. I'm the principal at New Foundations Charter School. I have been with PYN since, and the Work Ready program since it was in the mayor's office a long time ago. But I would say my one story that really sticks with me is I had a student who came to work in our Work Ready program, and I assigned him to a special needs student who had autism and was blind. And unfortunately during the summer, that student made some really poor choices. And as a result of that, I had to let him go, which was a really hard decision. But a few years ago, I actually saw an article in the Inquirer about him and about his role as a special education teacher in the school district. I hadn't talked to him in a really long time, and so clearly even the impact of working with that student and then even learning from his mistakes led him to his future career. And I, since then, have reached out to him and really excited about the work that he's doing.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing. One more? Anybody else? Terry, thank you.
So we have a few things with the kids that we hire with Parks and Rec. One, I'll kind of echo this lady's thing about kids who were in our Work Ready program and have aged out. And we actually have some that came back to work for us in the summer, and now they're actually working for our department full time. So, we feel like that's a success story that they kind of made Parks and Rec their career. One of the things we started a couple years ago with the kids for their project during the summer is an activity called the Charity Challenge, and we have the kids do some fundraising activities. We kind of give them a framework, but it's all them. They have to pick the charity, they have to figure out what they're going to do to fundraise, they get what they need for it. And last summer, we had, and they do it by district with our sites, with our departments divided into districts. So all the facilities we have in a given district, they raise for that same charity. And we had this one area where they selected a charity because there was a young girl in the neighborhood who died from this, it was a pediatric brain cancer type thing. And when she was alive and fighting it, the kids were all rallying around her, trying to provide support for her, but then she passed away. So last summer, they decided to raise for the charity that involved this pediatric brain cancer. And they did such a phenomenal job. They designed an event called Kidchella, which is kind of a take on the Coachella out in California. And the rec leader there told me that the kids, they just went so above and beyond that they didn't have to put out any money for that event whatsoever. They got donations and people donated time and everything. things like that in the future, whether it's with our organization or anywhere they go. So we think that that's a good
Thank
point
you.
for that.
And I know we could probably spend all morning and all day, and everybody has a story. And I would just encourage people, you know, the work can get hard, the days can get long, the paperwork cumbersome, we acknowledge that. But the work is important, and you know, the lives of young people as individuals that we're impacting, so whether it impacts their life in terms of their career goals, it impacts how they think about and view the world. Clearly there's an impact on the community at large as well. And so just find those moments where you can remember those young people that you've either had experience and impact and connections with previously, or even as we move forward in this summer. But we're all in this together, as Shakima mentioned, and really transforming lives and communities. And I just thank you all for your commitment to this work. And we want to continue to hear those kinds of stories as well, as a reminder of why we're doing the work that we're doing. So just a couple other quick things, and I'm going to turn it back to Farah. As I mentioned, you know, we did have a chance to kind of hear from some of you and review some of the feedback that you all gave, either in writing or, you know, in person, around kind of your experience, you know, participating as, you know, providers in Work Ready, you know, what's working, where are there areas for improvement, et cetera. And so I hope that you all have started to see some of the areas where we're hoping to impact some changes this year. So a couple of things. Online application is live already and was live in January, so we're really excited about that. Your letters of intent went out, your contracts start on February 1st. You know, we really heard from folks, and we started some of this last year, how important it is. You know, we do have to start summer and think about summer when it is cold outside, because it does take, you know, several months to gear up and all the hard work that folks did. And so we are really committed to continuing, you know, thinking about how do we work on the timelines to really meet the needs of the work that is happening. And we're asking you to work with us on that. So we're, you know, we're looking at adjusting. How can we, you know, move some timelines up, expand time in other places, you know, for deliverables, which you'll hear a little bit about later. And we're asking you to partner with us in that, because it definitely will help us all move forward into a smoother summer this year. The other thing that we're really hoping to continue to kind of expand and address is communication. And when I talk about communication, it could be large-scale communication, like this is what's happening broadly, you know, around Work Ready. We want to make sure that folks are informed, but even kind of our ongoing day-to-day communication, you know, with all of you. And again, we're partners in this, right? And as we all know, you know, it takes both of us to make this work happen. And as we're thinking about how we're moving forward together, kind of consistent, clear, timely communication is going to be really critical, because the work does move pretty quickly, and many of you are moving mountains, you know, to do this work. And so we want to make sure that we're maintaining those lines of communication as we work together over the next couple of months. And then as Farah mentioned earlier, you know, this is kind of the kickoff to summer, but we want to continue over the next couple of months to make sure that the right folks are, you know, are getting trained, that the resources are available, and the folks really do have what they need to be able to do the work they need to do over the next couple of months. And so even as you go through today, if you start jotting down, you know, hey, you know, it would have been helpful to have this, we want to hear that kind of information, because there'll be an opportunity to roll some of that out as we continue to work together. There will be a survey you'll have a chance to fill out, but we really do want your feedback. What worked, you know, where are there areas for improvement, and what kind of additional tools and resources you know, do you need? And then Shakima alluded to, just even as we're thinking about how we're internally structuring our work, to really streamline the service delivery structure for summer, as well as of our other programs. So we want to make sure, again, that, you know, it's as easy as possible for young people, providers, work sites, et cetera, to kind of participate and access the Work Ready system. And, you know, Shakima also addressed, you know, there's moments where things are going to happen on your end, on our end, and let's just work together towards solution and figure out how we can continue to do what's best for young people. So stay connected, stay in touch. We want to hear from you. Enjoy your day today, and thank you for giving me some time this morning. I'm going to pass it over to Farah.
Just to jump back a little bit into the agenda and what Stephanie had mentioned. So you've heard a lot about Shakima talking how the framework was released last year, and it's really helped us from a citywide perspective. Stephanie talking about how kind of we're really stepping into a new era of trying to streamlined, to be more intentional about the way we're talking about working with all of you, working with our programs. And so I want to just highlight some of the things that we've done on a real summer-specific programs level. So if you have not had a chance, all of you should have received the PYN program and model overviews when we sent out all of your budget templates and everything like that. I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, to take some time and read through those updates. We've really spent a lot of time aligning the language of PYN's program to the framework. And so you'll see that come out in your scopes. We're talking about all PYN models being aligned in terms of the continuum. So when you think about service learning and career exposure programming really being more in that early stage, intermediate stages being the work experience and internship models. When we're thinking about short-term experiences, they're really sitting in that early and intermediate stage. So as you're thinking about summer and the continuum, know that the models that you're operating obviously do fall and align with the continuum, and they are different depending on which model you're operating. We've also been really intentional about calling out the types of skills and mindsets that we want young people to get in the experiences that they are doing. And so when you're thinking about your program design, take a minute to look at the framework or even what we list in the scope and think about how we're incorporating teamwork, collaboration, creativity, courage, ethics. I think what the example that Terry gave about what they're doing with the REC work experience program and how they're empowering young people to go out and give back to their community, that is a great example of how leadership, teamwork, all of that is being incorporated into a work experience and enhanced. So as you're thinking and preparing for your programs, take a minute, think about how am I hitting all or most of these different areas. And then finally, we've made a shift, and you'll hear about this a little bit in the afternoon when we go into assessments. But when you think about the person that is prepared for the future of work and career advancement, that's really what employers are saying we need a young person to be like. And we know in a 6-week program, the concept of skill gain is really, really hard to measure. If you're doing it right, you're doing pre-assessments, post-assessments, 6-week programs, that's really hard. And we know that, and we've heard that feedback. And so we've done some language shifts that you'll hear and you'll see around kind of career readiness, progress, and growth. And so we're really going to be more intentional about what we expect to see in terms of moving the needle in a 6-week program. And that's, again, aligned with how are we seeing some of the indicators that are showing up in the individual. And those things are all kind of new for this year. And we're really hoping that it will help enhance quality overall of our entire system. Really this is kind of a plug for if you haven't had a chance to read your scopes yet, take a minute. The model design themselves hasn't drastically changed, but as Shakima mentioned before, we're really trying to align language and get a system so that as everybody's talking about it, we're all on the same page, even though we have a huge network of all of you doing your own thing. We want to talk about the system as a whole. So, when you start getting into the actual program, who are you really going to be talking to? So right now, here is a slide. We will send this out, so obviously you don't have to write everything down, but I want to make sure that you acknowledge, and we talked about kind of streamlining communication, there are a lot of people that you have to talk to at PYN, and we understand that. And so this is really our effort just to kind of run down in a high level, who are the types of people and the types of departments that you'll be talking to as we move into the summer. So kind of your day-to-day technical assistance, provider or Pindex access, PYN portals, Sterling access, online application troubleshooting. These will be the provider specialists. Now, we talked about we're really excited that we're moving things forward earlier. Unfortunately, not all of our provider specialists have been hired yet. We expect to have them on board ideally by the end of the month. And as soon as those provider specialists get on board, you will receive a direct email from them. However, in the interim, to try and make sure that it's as streamlined as possible, anything that you would have typically emailed to your provider specialists, you can email summer@pyninc.org. That is an email that's going to go to several internal staff that will make sure that we can troubleshoot and address your problems in the interim until we get our provider specialists on board. As we go down to like the programmatic support, again, your provider specialist is going to be your main point of contact when thinking about clearances, worksite agreements, debit cards. They're going to be your day-to-day contact. When I talked a little bit about quality review and file collection, that is going to be either your provider specialist, or in some cases, if you have a very large program, you will be assigned a lead quality assurance specialist. Those staff, if you have a larger program, can facilitate coming to your site and doing the quality assurance on site or supporting some of your enrollment sessions. Otherwise, your provider specialist is really going to be your main contact to set up troubleshooting, file collection, and so forth, as well as getting the reports on the amount of files that have been turned in, the amount that are complete, and so forth. I talked a little bit about, I talked a little bit about some of the updates to just how we're thinking about quality. And so we have a new position, you'll hear a little bit about it again in the afternoon, but instead of formally the contextual learning specialists, they're going to be called program quality coaches. So they're really going to be helping you think about how are we going to achieve some of the career readiness progress and growth milestones. If you're getting stuck on like what are some innovative ways to really incorporate new skill development, developing those skills and mindsets, those program quality coaches will really be your supports through that. And as soon as they're hired, similar to the provider specialists, you'll be introduced to them. And then finally, we do have our fiscal and administrative support team. And so there is a training, just, shameless plug for anybody who, from your organization who has not registered for the training next week. The finance specific training will be on the 15th. And we do really urge anyone that's doing the invoice development, the budget submission, they are really required to attend. We extend the offer for all of you from a programmatic lens to attend, just so that you know what's required from a finance side, because it may impact program. But any of those types of questions can be referred to contracts@pyninc.org.
I'm going to turn it over to Sarah in a second, but I realized that I actually forgot to mention something during my remarks earlier. I was getting so excited about the expertise in the room. I forgot a really important detail. So many of you, I think most of you actually, I filled out a survey a couple of weeks ago asking if you are interested and able to start summer in June. And so I think, as folks know, schools end earlier this year than they have in the past, and so they're ending the first week in June. And so we have been trying to see, both from an operational perspective and a funding perspective, if we can start summer in mid-June. And so we appreciate folks that completed the survey. If you have not yet, if you could do so, because we would really like a comprehensive picture. We cannot let you know quite yet if you can do that. And so I know that that's probably adding a little bit of anxiety and stress to folks because you are trying to plan and get ahead of things. But there are several factors that we need to consider. One is funding. So we are looking into a couple of different options to secure funding for those 2 weeks, because we definitely need wages, and then potentially some additional costs, which I actually have a question for folks in a minute. I'll have you kind of complete this on your index card. We're hoping to know soon, within the next couple of weeks, because we recognize that does change some of your timelines, etc. If you have not done so already, your budget should be submitted for 6 weeks, because right now we want to get your contracts executed. So we do not want to hold up your ability to have an executed contract and to invoice against that. So please do not delay any communication to us and our finance team, because you are waiting to hear about the 8 weeks. We will do a modification if we are able to extend the program 8 weeks and start earlier. So one of the requests that I do have of folks, and you can just fill it out on your index card and hand it to Farah or Ariel or any of the PYN staff who are raising your hand. Raise your hand real quick. Let us know what outside of wages, are there any other costs that you might incur during those 2 weeks? Because partly what we're looking at is how much resources, quite honestly, we're going to need to do that. And what we don't have a real sense of is it it really just paying the young people for those 2 weeks, or do you actually need to either bring on additional staff or do something else, rent space, etc.? We want to get a sense of, will you need any additional operating dollars? Because we don't want to under-secure resources or over-secure resources, because whatever we get, we would need to spend by June. So if you don't mind, again, it doesn't have to be super accurate, but if you can just give us some sense of, yes, I actually might need some operating dollars, this is what it looks like, and just give the card to one of the PYN staff. And we do hope to let you guys know in the next few weeks. We also respect that some of you cannot actually start early for a variety of reasons. So this is by no means a mandate, but we are trying to meet multiple needs, both your expressed interest as well as addressing the fact that young people will actually be out of school for almost a month this year, and usually it's about 2 weeks prior to the start of summer programming. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Farah or myself, but we promise you, as soon as we get confirmation about our ability to move forward, we will let you know, because we recognize the impact it has on timelines and the ability for folks to kind of do their work. So if you think of other questions related to this, or again, can just let us know some of your operational needs, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so we talked about the morning trainings when we did the overview. The next section of the morning is really going to be focused on the application and enrollment and really that type of information. I do want to just set a little bit of context before we go into that. For those of you that don't know, how this system works is that Philadelphia Youth Network, as an intermediary, we look at a lot of different partners and funding streams that are supporting summer employment. And we try and bring all of those funding streams together. We call it a blended funding model. And so when you as a provider are operating your programs, you may be operating under one funding stream or multiple funding streams. Sometimes you have specific partnerships. I know that there's some OST partners in the room today, so you may be specifically connected to those type of things. But as a system, because we have a blended funding model, we really do set out our enrollment processes and procedures to accommodate the most stringent and strict funder in terms of eligibility documentation. So what we're going to go through is really going to ensure that when you complete a packet as we've outlined, that a young person can participate in any program across the system regardless of funding stream. Now I want to be candid that the state did increase some of their eligibility requirements, and Ariel will be going through that. It's specifically about income verification. The impact definitely will be felt when you're completing the paperwork, but we do not believe, based off of what we've seen in the guidelines, that it will actually exclude any young people. So the young people that you're serving, based off of the new eligibility requirements, you will still be able to serve them, and Ariel will go into kind of the nuance of why that will occur. But I just do want to kind of call out that those state guidelines are having an impact on the eligibility information and the enrollment packet that will be collected. But I wanted to make sure that everybody understood why that was, that we're really trying to ensure that when a file is completed, a young person can participate in any work-ready program across the system. So if they're enrolling with you and then happen to connect to another provider, or if PYN is enrolling them in a larger citywide enrollment session and then referring them to an individual provider, that young person, it doesn't matter who that provider is, what funding stream they're connected to, they're able to participate. And so I wanted to set a little bit of that grounding and context about that before I hand it over to Ariel. And again, as just another plug, we specifically have Tabitha and Darlene that are going to be able to collect the note cards. Some of the things may be addressed as we're going through the training on your note card, but write it down anyway. Hopefully your answer will be addressed before we complete the training. And then we also will post after the training. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ariel to go into the eligibility and application information.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all here, and I again just want to thank everyone for joining us. It's a long day. We have a lot of information, but as Stephanie shared earlier, you guys are all the experts, so I'm going to turn the floor back to you so you don't have to just listening to my voice all day long. come back and spend a lot of time with you, so please bear with me a little bit. And again, I appreciate your participation. So my name is Ariel Benheim. I'm the Associate of Operations. For those of you who've been around the block, you probably started to hear from me at the end of last summer in relation to the compliance monitoring tools, and then a little bit this year, operationally speaking, with some of the emails that have recently gone through. And so I want to spend some time with you about eligibility and some updates to the applications. I think the biggest thing that I want to mention that I'll go through in more detail as I get more into enrollment updates is the income update. So I'll share that with you if that's coming. Just pay attention. So I just also want to start off with the basics. So some slight differences between wage-based experiences and incentive-based experiences, but for the most part they have the same eligibility requirements. They both serve, wage-based model serves in-school and out-of-school youth ages 14 to 21, anyone who's not matriculated into post-secondary opportunities yet. Both serve Philadelphia residents and eligible to work in the United States. They both also have these specific income guidelines. So I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. So few key differences in the income requirements this year. And this is passed down from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, so don't blame us. But the income is now determined by family size of 1 for individual income for the young person, unless they are legally married and have spousal income. Unless they're legally married and have children. Those people would be included in their family size. Income is personal income. Unless they are legally married, then they'd add that spousal income, okay? So the difference is their family is not, if I'm a young person, I have 2 parents in my household and I have 3 siblings, and I'm accumulating my income with my parents, no longer the case. In most cases, more than likely, it's going to be a family size of 1 and income of 0, because these young people obviously don't have many opportunities to have that income. Write your question down on an index card.
I just want you to repeat it again, because I'm not sure if I'm understanding you correctly.
Okay.
Just say it again.
Okay. So family size is now based on the individual who's applying to participate. So if I'm a young person, I'm 14 years old, I'm applying to participate in your program, I don't really have an income. Now, I also want to preface that workforce development income does not count in their income. So if they had a job with you last summer, that will not count. However, if they have another part-time employment, like they, work at Starbucks or something like that, that does count towards their income. But your work that you've done with them in the past, that does not. So if I'm an individual, I'm a family size of 1. If I'm married, I'm a family size of 2. If I have children, 1 or 2, whatever, they get added to that family size. Income is based on the personal individual income, unless they are married, then that person has income. Then those 2 get accumulated.
So it's not family size anymore. It's not like
The definition of family size has shifted.
Right.
So it is the individual. So it's personal income. Family size is the individual, unless they personally have a family of their own.
So this is also why we had kind of indicated, or I had tried to say, that this is really not going to exclude any participants. And so it's ultimately going to add a verification form that will show you how to complete. But this actually is kind of expanding the opportunities for participants, because if a young person was part of a family whose family size may have exceeded because their parents were both working and they might have increased the eligibility, those young people are now, it's at the participant level. So as Ariel said, yeah, so that's a really good shift, because we think that it's going to really actually allow more participants who might have been quote unquote over income because their family's income was larger. they will actually be able to participate because they're participating at the income is at the participant level. But what we will go through is how we are going to document it based off of the requirements and guidelines that have been outlined by the state. But that was really ultimately the big shift that came down from the Commonwealth of redefining the eligibility guidelines. So for obviously the adult system, it's still the participant, but the shift is in the youth system, it's maintaining that participant and not adding them to the family that they are part of.
So I do also want to echo that this is going to be discussed throughout as we get more into enrollment documents, which we're not getting to just yet. As we talk about the income verification documents, we'll spend a little bit more time on exactly what you'll be collecting from individuals to prove this income or not. But I just wanted to briefly go over the income guidelines. I know there's a lot of murmuring and questions going on. This is something that is new. Please, I encourage you to write down your questions on index cards. Wave them up. These two fine young ladies on the wall will collect them, and we'll see if we have questions that we can answer now, or if they're more specific to your program that we'll answer offline, or we'll share answers to questions that are asked later to the group. So then wage-based models potentially will also have males who are 18 years of age and older, in which case they will have to be registered with the Selective Service. We'll go over those requirements as we talk about enrollment, but I just wanted to let you guys see that a little bit. Career exposure, incentive-based models, the only big difference with those requirements are 12 to 15 years of age. So again, as we talk about enrollment, we'll talk a little bit about how you would prove their school status, but that's the biggest difference, and they are only in-school youth, not out-of-school youth for those folks, okay? Okay, so online applications, some very, very slight changes this year to the online application. Most specifically, as Stephanie shared, we've been really intentional about getting an earlier start this year, exposing our young people to have the ability to apply earlier than before. And so because of that, referral codes are not yet active in Pendex. However, I can share with you our anticipated activation for your referral contract codes should be no later than early next week. And of course, we will share that information as soon as it does go live. But Isel is going to share with you in a few minutes some key things about Pendex that will allow you to sort of edit any individuals who have already applied to place them in your referral code specifically. And I do want to also emphasize that young people can also go in at any time after referral codes have been, after they've applied and edit their application once they've already submitted it. So a quick reminder, it's not on here, but if they haven't actually started their application and they've only created a login, if they don't go forward with the application within 48 hours, their login will go away. So please remind young people if they've started to apply, they have to continue their application within 48 hours. So when they create that login, the next step is to go click the link that they get from their email and continue their application from there. So there is something slightly different in the online application regarding family size and income. It does specify on the online application to indicate their family size as themselves and their spouse if they have it, and the children if they have it, and then income, same thing like I reviewed before. But we have already seen a few mistakes with that, probably because people aren't used to those requirements. And so as more people are starting to apply, just remind your participants the reasoning behind that, and we will verify it when we get to enrollment. So we are anticipating that young people will probably with this application part of it because they're assuming their family size includes their entire household, not their individual family size or individual income. So we'll show you in a little bit how it gets verified. However, I do want to let you know that part of the reason we started the earlier online application this year is because we will have to send this information with the state and get it verified. which will have no impact on your enrollment internally at PYN. We will be verifying who is able to participate based on the enrollment forms that you guys submit. But the state will need to we will need to share with the state everyone's family size and income information from the application. So paper application, so this is really only specific to career exposure programs, and at that, only 12-year-olds. So we really want to push as much universal application as possible. So anyone who has the ability to apply online is anyone who is legally able to create an email address, which is anyone who is 13 years of age and older. So even if they are career exposure, they should be encouraged to visit our website and apply online. The only paper applications you should be collecting are those who are 12 years of age, because they are not legally allowed to create email addresses, and of course there's many of them who do it anyway, and we can talk offline about that. But 13 years of age or older, they can apply online. If they are using a paper application, this is slightly different from the paper application of years past, only because it's not specific to career exposure. So we're hoping and anticipating that we can use this paper application with all of our young people who have a variety of different needs for other programs throughout the year. And so it's not specific to career exposure. However, you'll see that there's a lot of similarities to last year's career exposure application specifically. So again, when we're talking about aligning our language and being consistent with our program models, this is going to be very similar to, again, what the career exposure application looked like last year, as well as the online application and capturing the same information. Right now, we do have to do this for our 12-year-olds, and so that's why they aren't allowed to apply online. The biggest difference that you'll see between this application and the previously used career exposure application is that there's no place for basically the application signature page is a separate entity, and so all paper applications will have to be submitted with an application signature page. I will go over that when we go through enrollment documents, but we need that in order for this application to be complete. And the income collection is the same as what we need to collect for the state. And so that is the big difference. Those are the two big differences with this application. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much it from my end, and I'm gonna turn it over to Izell, who's gonna talk to you guys about Pindex, but you will see me again, I promise.
Hello everyone, I'm Izell Green, the Business Intelligence Project Manager. I work in the IS department, and I am one of the project leads for the software that you guys use to recruit, enroll, and pay Pindex. So I am just going to here. I'm going to take you guys through Pindex, the Pindex system in itself. So right now, I'm just going to take you through our test site so that I can do whatever I want in this site, but you guys are actually going to use www.pindex.org and you'll receive your login information when the time is right. And also, if you haven't already, send your user list to summer@pyninc.org for your user access to Pindex. So everyone who needs access to Pindex, you should let us know who they are through a Excel spreadsheet that whatever form that they have for you guys to submit. Once we create your users, you'll receive an email with your username and your password. For those who had logins last year, your username will stay the same, but your password will be reset. So just look out for that password reset email. And if you need, if you don't remember your username or you have any troubleshooting issues, just be be sure to contact your provider specialist, and they'll be able to give you assistance. And today I'm just going to focus on some of the newer features in the system, maybe new to some, maybe old to others. And so the first thing would be the recruit and release feature. So last year, actually I might need to go to the actual system. Starting, the participants already created some online applications, and some of these participants might connect with you guys during the summer, or you might recruit them, or you might run into them, or you might even just need, looking for certain participants who have interest areas that your jobs provide. So the recruit and release feature has some of those filters on the screen already to help you filter down and figure out who's interested in architecture, who's interested in construction, and you can also do it by age and zip code. So I think I need to go into our actual system because I don't think that our test system has enough data for me to show you guys a good example. So some of the cool features of Pendex, we use Microsoft's software that allows the grid features are similar to what you would use in Microsoft Excel. So for instance, the status column, you can filter everyone who's completed their online application. So now you already know this person has finished their online application, they received an email with, wait to hear from us details and opportunity statements and all those things that come attached with the email upon completion. So let's just say I wanted to find someone who was interested in arts. I clicked on the show additional icon so that I can see some other details about these participants. And here is the interest areas. So there are 3 interest areas that the participants are allowed to fill out. So you might want to put it in the area interest 1 first and recruit your youth, interest 2, 3, etc. So then I will just select, I'm sorry, I'm not even on the recruit feature, I'm sorry. I will select some participants based on who is interested in arts. And my favorite thing to do is just to hold control down instead of trying to do it one by one, because if you make a mistake, then it's going to deselect everyone else that you selected before and just select that one person. So my pro tip would be to hold control while you are selecting your participants. So I'm just going to select random 3 participants for the second, and then I'm going to click this recruit button. Once I click the recruit button, it'll give you a summary of the participants that you have selected, and then you can enter your contractor code that you want to put your participants to. And once you do that, so I just said I'll just pick one of these. These are not our codes, these are another organization's, but once you click submit, then it will recruit those participants, change their online application referral code to your referral code, and now you will be able to see them on the enrollment tab, on the other enrollment tab, the maintain applicants.
Isabel, can you clarify, will providers, once they get their access, they'll only be able to enter the code?
Correct. So that's one thing I just skipped over. So by default, when you go to the recruit release screen, it's on only general pool. So general pool are participants who did not enter a referral code when they did their online application. If you want to see participants that have used your online application, you can go to my contractor codes and then click apply to see everyone who used your referral code. And the reason why you would want to go to my contractor codes to see who applied, let's just say it wasn't a good fit, or they just weren't as interested in your program and decided they wanted to take their chances and go back into the general pool, you can also release those participants. So the same way that you recruit, you select the participant that you want to release from your contractor code, you click the release button, and it confirms the participants that you want to release, and then it will send them back, it will remove your contractor code from your participants. Actually, I think that's it, so
Yeah, so everyone, this is really, I think we definitely heard feedback that sometimes young people logging back into their own applications is difficult if they forget their email or they forget their password. This will allow you as a provider, if you know that student name and they're just in the general pool, then or the citywide application, you can go in and search that student's name and automatically move them over to your code. So that's really kind of taking your feedback that was really a struggle sometimes. You would either have to send the list over to the provider specialist, maybe by that time somebody else had already recruited that young person or asked for that young person. So this gives a little bit more control to you if a young person has already filled out the application or doesn't fill out the application with your referral code. So that's really the goal of this. This will also help you if you are getting towards the end of the enrollment window and you realize that you're lowering your recruitment numbers. This will give you an opportunity to look at young people who, as Izell showed, either are interested in areas that you are supporting or are in specific zip codes. All of those filters are available. And as Izell mentioned, it's very similar to like an Excel format with like searches and filters and things like that. So we wanted to make sure that you saw this new feature. We do apologize, it's a little bit hard to see, but once you all get access to Pendex in the next week or so, we definitely recommend you look at it. If you have questions, you can send those questions to summer@PYN-INC as you kind of poke around, and we'll make sure to help troubleshoot that. But we're really excited about this new feature because I think it will help all of you during the application and enrollment phases to ensure that young people are connected to your codes. One of the things that I wanted to clarify with Izell is that you will only be able to see in your logins either young people connected to your codes or young people that are connected to the citywide enrollment that have not entered a code, and that's the general pool codes. So if a young person is connected to another provider's code, then you will not have the access to change that. So that's then either, because that means that that young person either has entered that referral code to another provider or that other provider has tagged that young person to say, I'm working with them. If you run into those situations, that is then when you need to coordinate and communicate to your provider specialist with that contact information to say, I'm looking for this student, they're indicating that they filled the application online, they're not showing up in general pool and they're not showing up in my code, and we can help troubleshoot that. So I just want to clarify, you will not be able to go into someone else's code to change somebody. So if a young person is connected to your code, other providers will not have access to that. It's only access to the general pool, those that have not had a code entered. And when you do the recruit, it automatically updates their code to your referral code. So there's no additional step that the student has to take or that you need to do with your provider specialist once you do that recruit feature. However, as I mentioned, if they're not showing up either on your codes or in the general pool and you know that they have applied, that's when you would reach out to your provider specialist to help troubleshoot. If you can write your questions down.
It's just a suggestion,
Okay.
actually. When we recruit sometimes, the student find about another program and they just go to the application and change the code. Is there a way to get an alert? Because there's no way, unless you had print a list and then print the next day and compare, there's not really a way to find out who was that student. It's just time saver, I guess.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
So
Yes.
we can definitely put that down and we'll see
All right.
what types of things we can look at. It might not be like an automatic alert for this year, but if there's some ways that we can look at some of our data on the back end to get some lists of things that maybe will come out like on a weekly basis or something like that, we can look into that. Great, well, thank you guys so much, and like I said, stay tuned for updates and resources as we finish the training, because you'll get some of that added.
Okay, thanks, Izell. We're noticing that some of the questions are actually going to be answered either during this portion of the presentation or the next. And so we're going to answer as many questions as are possible as they come up. But one question that in particular that was good was the income eligibility requirements are the same for based programs and wage-based programs. It was bolded in one of the sections, and I apologize if that was confusing. But both programs will need to meet those income eligibility requirements. Okay? All right, so we're going to go into some enrollment fun. I know that there are a lot of you in this room who are really familiar with some of these enrollment procedures. There are some changes, and I do want to highlight those, of course, for you all. But I'll, again, ask for participation in the things that you guys are the expert on. So, first and foremost, the steps for the enrollment process. So, you should all have access to the flyers that we sent out for you to put in that are fillable. It should be recruitment flyer, fillable, or something like that, where you can input your specific referral code and then distribute these to you to recruit them to apply using your referral code when it becomes available. And again, Mizell just showed you guys ways to recruit release if they've already applied and they didn't put in your referral code yet. Paper application obviously wouldn't be related to the referral code, but looks like the lights are maybe behind that now. So you can ignore that portion for those who are 12 years old. And then you guys are going to hold enrollment sessions. So I want to also emphasize that it is important that you complete the online application when you're collecting enrollment paperwork. If you try to submit that enrollment paperwork, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but if you try to submit that enrollment paperwork and they have not yet completed an online application, we won't be able to accept it. So just make sure, whether it's at your enrollment session or before they attend, that they have completed their online or paper application. Okay. Okay, and so then at your enrollment sessions, you'll be collecting their enrollment paperwork, make sure they meet all the eligibility requirements, and then you will submit your files to PYN for quality review. You will be able to schedule your enrollment appointments with PYN in order to deliver those participant files in person. And I'll get to some security in a little bit as to why we have you do that in person. But the new thing that's slightly different this year is the enrollment document receipt is just the ability to submit all of your files at once, noting which files have been submitted, and you are going to keep a copy of which files you submit to PYN. So it's very important that you keep these copies at your organization site. If for whatever reason something happens to them, and ultimately just the file retention policy is that you maintain files for 7 years once you've collected their enrollment information. So I want to emphasize that. Okay. So this is the enrollment document receipt, slightly different from last year, but ultimately fulfilling the same purpose. You can see on the side, nope, sorry. It's a little bit small, I apologize. When you get the provider toolkit, you'll be able to see through this a little bit more. And I also want to emphasize that we will be posting, or these are all already posted on the PIN portal. So once you get access to that, you'll be able to see all of this. But we will also follow up with a zip file just so you get them directly to you guys. But so this is slightly different, and just in that you can indicate whether you're submitting an entire enrollment file or you're submitting additional documents. So if they've already submitted their file, you either know in advance or you found out later that there was something that was slightly incomplete about that enrollment file, that's called an additional document. And so you would note on the enrollment document receipt which one it is. You want to make sure that their last name and first name are indicated, as well as their enrollment ID, which I'll talk about when we get to the quality review checklist. But I do want to just also emphasize before we get there, you want to make sure that the name you have listed on this enrollment document receipt matches the name that's on their application, their enrollment paperwork, and it matches what's on their social security card, or whatever their proof of social security is. Wages are tied to individual social security cards. So if they have a different name that they go by, that's not their legal name on their social security card, they're going to be incomplete, and we're going to change it. So it would make life a lot easier if you guys kind of are proactive about that, and then also notify those young people also that that's going to be happening. If they look up Or if you look up their name and it's different from what they used to apply, that's why. It's because their name wouldn't match their social security card. So it's really important that that gets done properly ahead of time so we avoid any of those issues. Okay, so the quality review checklist. Everyone should be slightly familiar with this who've used it before. Can anyone tell me what they think is the purpose of this quality review checklist? Yes.
So, I would venture to say that it is a great document for your provider specialist or everybody over at PYN to cross-reference whatever you're turning in.
Yeah.
And that all the information is complete from your perspective.
Sure. Yeah, so she said that it was a way for us at PYN to know what's been submitted, and for us to verify. Yes, definitely it's for our quality review team to verify what's been submitted. Yeah?
For us to know when the file is complete or not?
Sure, definitely a great way for you guys to know whether the file's been complete. I'll get to, I think it's the next, oh no. There's a portion where you can say exactly which documents are used for eligibility. So again, a way for you to track what you have in front of you, and then for us to track what you're using as a proof of different eligibility reasons. Ultimately, PYN is the employer of record for all of your youth participants. And so we're required to abide by the regulations and guidelines that have been set by our funders, by the Commonwealth, and also employment law. So it's really important for us to use this document as a guide to know what's been submitted, to know whether we have everything, and then it's also a way for us to use how, and track ultimately how we've communicated that information to you or the young person. So, okay, so again, last name, first name should match what's on this proof of social security, and the application, and then the enrollment ID. So, does anyone know how to locate the enrollment ID from Pindex? They can share with the group so we all know. Anyone? Okay, so the enrollment ID is going to be found by searching that person's last name. I will say there's going to be a lot of people who have same names who've applied. So use that person's date of birth as the piece of information that you can verify that that young person is the one you are actually looking for. And then on the left-hand side from Pindex, which Marcel went over before, you'll see that enrollment ID. It's a 7-digit number, and that's how you'll use. Oh no, I'm sorry. I think it's 9 digits actually. It's a long number, and you'll use that and put that on the quality review checklist. I also want to say, like just as before I mentioned, if an online application is not complete, we can't accept it. This quality review checklist not being with the application is also something that we need in order for the file to be complete. Mainly because if it's not there, there's certain things that we don't know about the file. So again, what has been submitted, but also whether clearances are required. And so I'll get into that a little bit later, but just to preemptively state, if any of your youth have direct contact with children, they'll need to be cleared through a background check service. And so if you haven't indicated on the quality review checklist whether that's occurred, or whether that's required rather, we won't know whether their file is complete or not complete, so we'll mark it as incomplete assumptively. So it's really important for you to submit this quality review checklist, letting us know whether or not that's the case. Okay, so this quality review checklist has been slightly updated to align for ease of quality review internally at PYN. So you'll notice it's the same information, just flip-flopped a little bit. And so the eligibility documentation is going to be higher up than the enrollment documents this time around. But it's the same. The only difference is now we've kind of adjusted the low income verification proof, so that's aligned a little bit with what that form looks like. We'll get to that in a little bit. But otherwise, how this is formatted is pretty much the same as it's been. So you're going to check off when a document has been submitted, so whether an eligibility documentation has been submitted for social security number, date of birth, residency, etc. And then the numbers where it says verification submitted, you're going to indicate which document has been submitted to fulfill those requirements. And then at the bottom is the enrollment document portion, where you will say which documents have been submitted and whether clearances are required. So that has been also a little bit updated for ease of the use of this form. So you're really just going to say if they require clearances or they don't require clearances, and if they do require clearances, whether you've submitted new clearances or old. When I talk about clearance requirements, I'll spend some time about exactly what that means, but that's just the biggest difference with the clearance requirements on this form. And, oh, there it is. And then you're going to sign that you have, verifying that you've reviewed this information before submitting it to PYN. On the enrollment document receipt, I should have mentioned, when you bring that in, you'll also sign off. Whoever intakes your file, usually a provider specialist, will also sign off on it, and that will serve as your receipt that you've received, that we received your documents. And so quality review checklist serves a similar purpose, but it might be different people who are filling out the quality review checklist and then who's bringing it to PYN. So this just designates that the person who's reviewing those documents with the young person has verified it. Oh, oops, sorry. And then you're also going to write in the top left-hand corner the contract or referral code, so that we know that it all goes together. That will be verified on the enrollment document receipt, but it's just important to note it as many places as possible. Okay, so application signature page, for those of you who've used this document before, this is not new. However, it is accompanying any application that gets submitted. So if they complete an online application, they need an application signature page. If they complete a paper application, they need an application signature page. So the purpose that this serves is that the youth are, number one, attesting to what information they submit is true, and that what it was submitted by them. And they're also consenting to the release of this information that they've submitted. It also has an equal employment opportunity statement that employers cannot discriminate against applicants for any reason, and that's protected by law. And then there's also a section about the waiver and release option. So if participants do not want their images shared by PYN or by you through promotional or educational materials, they would check this off. If they do not want those to be shared. And then the Buckley amendment option is if they don't agree to contact the school in order to retrieve academic information. So both of these are check boxes if they do not agree with those statements. A little bit of a double negative, and it's kind of confusing, but that's that's the purpose there. And then, and ultimately you want a young person to fill this out with their parent. If they're under 18 especially, because the parent guardian signature is required, just like it is for most documents that are filled out by a young person who's under 18. But usually it's the parents who want their images shared or don't want them shared or don't want their information retrieved from the school. But either way, parent or applicant. And so they both have to sign. This document is also emailed after a young person completes an online application. They will automatically get this, so they should have it already if they have access to a printer when they come to your enrollment sessions. Okay, so eligibility to work documents. So these should be very familiar to you guys. And also these are documents, other than the work permit, of course, that you should all be filling out when you're applying for a job or you're getting employed by your current organization. So W-4, I-9, ACT 32, and work permit, and we'll go into some details about each of them. So W-4, the only thing I want to mention of note about this really is that you want to fill out the current year's documents, and that's again related to employment law. That if they are applying for a new job, which of course they are by filling out this application within the current year, they should have that current year's W-4 completed. This is going to be filled out by the youth applicant, And it's to inform the employer of how much pay needs to be withheld for taxes. So that's a fun fact for anyone who doesn't know. So question 7 is kind of confusing sometimes for people, especially young people. So it's asking basically, did you work last year? Did you file for taxes? Did you receive a refund or money back for all of your federal taxes? And if you're expecting the same thing to happen this year, if any of these questions are answered, or I'm sorry, if all of these questions are answered, they fill in the word exempt. They can also fill in a 0 for question 7. That serves the same purpose. And then the young person signs. This one doesn't actually need a parent signature. Okay, I-9. I am going to spend a little bit of time on this one. There are some common errors that I'll review when we get to page 2. But we're going to start with page 1, which gets filled out by the youth. So it's pretty much basic information for the top portion. Name, social security number, date of birth, that kind of thing. The second section is whether they're a citizen or whether they are non-citizen and eligible to work. If that's the case, they should fill in any of their alien registration numbers or permanent lawful resident. That should be filled in here. And then they're going to sign. There is a box. Where did it go? Oops, sorry. There is a box, I'm sorry, it's grayed out here. Oops, sorry guys. It is grayed out, I apologize. There's a box for preparer translator, and that is if they are using a translator to fill out this application. If they're not using one, there's a box that they would check. I'm not using one. If they are, the translator fills out that section. So that's just something I want to know. Okay, page 2. So this is a little bit confusing because page 2 of the I-9 is to be filled out by the employer. Since PYN is the employer of record, some of you may think that we should be the ones filling it out. However, legally, whoever is collecting the documentation and putting their eyes on those eligibility documents is the one who has to fill this out. So you guys are going to be filling this out when you're completing it, when you see the young person in front of you. It's also important to note that for these eligibility documents for the I-9 that they present to you, we are going to assume that you guys are seeing an original document. However, we don't necessarily want someone to give us their social security card, so you should be making copies, or the youth should be making copies before you submit it to us. But again, we're going to assume that you guys are putting your eyes on the original, as that's how this form is to be filled out. The one thing we cannot accept for this form is if it is a picture of the document. So if you have someone who took a picture of their social security card and their thumb is in that picture, that is very much not okay. And so there is the ability on a lot of smartphones, if any of you guys have them, or if your youth have them, that they can now have the ability to scan a document from those smartphones. So you can, it's kind of taking a picture, but it looks like it's a scan and an original copy. That will certainly be accepted, but a picture photograph of that document is really not accepted. And so try your best to make sure the youth actually brings the original document to your enrollment sessions so that you can submit the copies to us. And I do want to go over just a little bit of some common errors that happen with this form. So there's a List A document, which is things like a passport. Passport is pretty much the most common one that gets submitted for List A, to be honest with you guys. Or it's List B and List C documents. So List B and List C often get confused, and the next page does have, it's grayed out, I apologize, but the next page does have some common documents. So when you get your provider toolkits, you'll be able to see that document, and when you have your I-9 page 3, we'll have those lists written out for you. So Social Security card and birth certificate, those are both List C documents. So if you submit 2 List B documents or 2 List C documents, that's not valid. So we need a List B and a List C document. here. The issuing authority is also often a common error that we see. So you should be filling out what the document is, the issuing authority who gave it, who issued that document. So if it's the Social Security card, for example, for List C, the issuing authority is the Social Security Administration. And you can abbreviate that to say SSC and SSA for Social Security card and Social Security Administration. If it's a driver's license for List B, you would put the state that issued that driver's license. Same thing with a birth certificate. The state is who issues those, or the country, if it's a birth certificate. Foreign birth certificates are acceptable for List B. And so that would be the issuing authority. I will also say if any of those documents are expired, they cannot be used for the purposes of the I-9. So most common one that we see is like a junior temporary driver's license. They can be submitted for proof of date of birth, which we'll get to. But for the I-9, if they're expired, unfortunately we can't accept them. So consider this. A temporary driver's license is usually only valid for a certain window of time. I think it's 2 weeks. So if they submit, when they submit it to you, it's valid, but before the program start date, it's not. That won't be acceptable for the I-9. So think about that when you're reviewing those I-9 documents. It has to be a non-expired eligibility document. Okay, and then you guys are gonna fill out the portion for the employer section. It should already be filled in with PYN's address. If it's not and you happen to get a non-filled in I-9, you can go ahead and write our address in, but don't write your address in. Again, PYN is the employer of record, so it's important to note that. And that's pretty much it. Okay, ACT 32 is a little bit more straightforward, but again, this is one of those documents that will be filled in with PYN's address when it gets sent to you. If it's not, you write it in. But this gets filled out by the young person. They do not need a parent signature here. A common error on the signature section is that they use their date of birth, but it's actually asking for the date of signature. So just make sure that gets done correctly. Okay, work permit. So we don't actually have a visual of an actual work permit for purposes of personally identifiable information not being posted on the internet, or in a presentation like this. But this is an application for a work permit. So this is not, please do not have your young people submit this. They need to take this work permit application to the school district sites that are listed below, which will allow them to get a work permit. A couple of things to note about the work permit. So this is for all youth who are ages 14 to 18. If they are going to be over 18 before the program start date or at some point during the program start date, before the program start date, not at some point during. If they're going to be over 18 before the program start date, they don't need this. Of course, it doesn't make the application incomplete if they do, but they don't need it. However, they can reuse work permits. So if they participated last year in your program, or they have a work permit for some other program that they participated in, they can reuse those work permits year after year. What makes a work permit complete is their name, their signature, and a stamp from the School District of Philadelphia. So there are some locations that the School District of Philadelphia will allow to be used, but it does need that official stamp. Otherwise it's not valid, so that's important. That's it. Okay, so those are all the eligibility employment documents. So parental acknowledgement form. Does anyone know what this form is for?
Yep.
So you said 14 and 15 need the parents to know what time they're supposed to be working.
Yeah, so she said if they're 14 or 15, parents are supposed to know what times they'll be working. So they're just signing off for people who are 14 and 15 that they will be working those times at PYN. Again, employer of record is Philadelphia Youth Network, so it's just the name, not the address, that will be filled in. Hopefully it's pre-filled in. If it's not, just write in PYN, not your name. The date that your program is commencing, and then they fill it out with a parent or guardian with their name and parent's signature. so that's a reused form. So participant handbook. So you guys should all have access to participant handbooks from the PIN portal. When you have your enrollment sessions, they should be reviewing these and then signing off if they have done so. So that has things like personnel policies, grievance policies, what to do for incident reporting, that kind of thing. So pretty standard personnel policy like any place of employment, and then they're just gonna sign off. This also does not need a parent signature, so they're just gonna write their name, their date of birth as their designated form of identity, and then sign a date. Okay, so eligibility documentation. So these are the 5 big sections that we need documentation to prove. So I'm going to go through each of them, but I thought I would kind of quiz the room. Can anyone give some examples of proof of social security number? I kind of already said it before.
Social security card.
Social security card. That's pretty much the big one that we usually receive. However, sometimes that's hard to access for some youth for whatever reason. So a W-2 is also the most common form of proof of social security number, and a letter from Department of Human Services that has a social security number on it with their name will also count. So important if they are not using a social security card or any other documentation, we want to make sure it has their name and their social security card. So if it says mom's name and it has just their social security number, that's not exactly correct. So we just want to be able to prove that it is this person's social security number. Okay. Proof of Philadelphia residency. Anyone know some common documents that we use to prove that? Utility bills.
ID.
State ID. Anyone? Report cards. Yeah.
School ID.
School ID. Good. Yeah. That's it. All the good ones. I will also say another one is a work permit. So it only if it lists their address. So it'll get stamped by the school district of Philadelphia usually. But if it also lists their address, which is the place for them to fill it out, work permit's not incomplete if it does not list their address, but it can be used as proof of Philadelphia residency if it lists their address and it's complete for all the other reasons. They can use that as proof of Philadelphia residency. What about proof of age? Birth certificate's the big one.
Passport.
Passport, yep.
ID.
School ID if it has their date of birth, yeah. And not expired. Well, no, I'm sorry. If it's expired, they can't use it. If it's a state ID. So if it's a state ID and it's expired, but it has their date of birth, they can use that as proof of date of birth, but again, not on the I-9. School ID cannot be expired. School ID has to be valid with their date of birth to be used as proof. Yeah.
Last year we had an issue with school IDs that had the year of where they were issued, and they were kicking back saying that they were expired. Is that something that we're not going to experience this year?
I think
I'll put that on the list of questions,
All right.
Yeah.
and then we'll follow up so that we can get the answer.
That's a good question though.
I'll,
Any other
I'll
proof
write it down.
of date of birth?
Thank you.
Passport, good. And work permit again. So work permit, there is a space for people to write in their date of birth. Again, it's not incomplete if it does not list their date of birth. The things that make a work permit complete are name, signature, and stamp. But if they do have a space to write it in, and if it's there, and it's stamped, and it's complete for all the other reasons, they can use it as their proof of age. Okay? All right, now proof of selective service is kind of very unique. So again, this is just for males who are 18 at any point during the program period. So I'm going to get into that when we talk about it as we go through. And then proof of school status is only for career exposure programs for 12 to 15-year-olds. So I'll talk about that in a second as well. So this is the full list of the most common ones and some extras as well. This will also be posted on the PIN portal, but again, like I said, included in a zip file, I'll tell you guys. So the selective service registration, they will go to, if they don't already have one, they'll go to sss.gov, which is the selective service website through the government. They will fill in all the appropriate information to register for selective service, and then there's an internet verification that they can print out. However, if they're going to turn 18 at any point during the course of the program, not the time of the program start, but during the course of the program, they still need this selective service registration. And so what they can do is they can register up to 30 days before their 18th birthday. However, some of your applicants will apply and enroll before 30 days before their birthday. So what they can do is they can fill out a paper application that they can print from the Selective Service website. And they can fill it out and submit it with their enrollment documentation, and that'll give us consent to actually register for them for Selective Service at any point during their program. So that would make them complete even if they will turn 18, on July 15th, but you submit their paperwork on March 1st, for example. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, so school status is pretty straightforward, but that's for career exposure programs, so we do need verification that they are in middle school. And so we would just need typical things like a school ID or report card, if they have a dropout letter from their last school or district, or their high school diploma. So these are all the school status proofs. So the two ones, because it is for in-school use only, would be the school record, school ID, report card, or a written statement from the school.
So the report card is not the end all be all. So if a student gives a school ID, I don't have to also have the school.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Good question. So she asked if for career exposure, you only had to submit a school report card, which is not true. They can submit a school ID. So that also counts as proof of school status.
This question from before, but for the W-4, I-9, and Act-30, whatever, is that also for career exposure or because
Nope. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I should have mentioned those employment paperwork is only for wage-based programs, not for incentive-based programs. Thank you for addressing that. So only the W-4, I-9, ACT-32, and the work permit are only applicable to wage-based programs, so everything that is not included in career exposure. And career exposure does not meet those forms. But they, yeah. All right. Okay, so we're gonna spend some time on the income verification form. This is not too different from the low-income determination form of years past. However, it should be a little bit easier to complete, and of course it has the updated income guidelines listed. So I do want to spend some time on this portion, and I would just say that I want to align with what Darren said earlier in that majority of your reviews are going to meet these income guidelines, and so it will allow for more participants to be approved. So don't be scared because it's new. Because ultimately it won't be too challenging for you to fill it out. We've made it easy enough for you to understand, and also it will allow for more participant approval. If for whatever reason they don't meet the guidelines listed on this page, PYN will allow for 5% of young people that are over income guidelines to be approved. We just need a written request. So you can send that to thessummer@pyninc.org or to your and they'll send it to the appropriate people. But again, most of your youth are going to meet these income guidelines. So just to reiterate, family size is now only one unless they are legally married or they have a child. Income, and I didn't mention this before, income is going to be monthly. So that it's going to be personal monthly income. Unless they are legally married, then they will also include their spousal income as well, monthly.
Very quick question.
Sure.
Some of the youth in the program get stipends, small stipends for being in your program. Do you have to report that as
No,
well?
anything that comes from your program that is workforce development is not included.
It's not.
We'll verify. I'll put that as the question and make sure
That's
that
a
we
good
post
question,
it.
yeah, but if it's workforce development related, it's typically not included.
And is the same thing for career exposure? That they are.
Income guidelines are required for all participants in this program.
That is the same guidelines. So the youth
Same guidelines.
under
Yep.
14 and under 8, so those are.
So still zero. Yep. Okay. So most of the time, so let me just go through this. be listing their family size of 1 and that they make $0 income. If they do, and because we have to collect proof of income, but they don't make any income, this form serves as self-attestation of that $0 income, okay? If they do make money, they need to prove it, okay? So there's directions on this form that lists what counts as proof of income. So 2 consecutive pay stubs dated within the last 6 months, an employer letter that captures equivalent information to a pay stub. If they're self-employed, they bring a quarterly estimate of their tax schedule or a recent letter from Department of Human Services or DHS. But again, most of your youth aren't gonna have an income, but if they do need to prove it. And we just request that this is on the honor system and that their information is verified by you guys. This should be filled out with the young person and yourself together. So you will need to sign off on this, so I'd recommend that you guys do this together. And so, even if they make income, they shouldn't be writing 0. They should be really, truly filling out their information and submitting it if they make any money.
I'm gonna write it down because I know you're gonna say write it down, but just throw it out there. What about the students that receive SSD?
So I'm gonna get there. I promise. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. So they can also, you know what? I missed it. That's why. Okay. So there are 3 ways they can be eligible under this form. So the first is that they receive state benefits. So they can receive 3 state benefits and then they don't have to submit income. They should still fill this out for what they make, if they make anything. So we want to be collecting income for everyone. However, they'll be eligible based on income if they receive TANF benefits, SNAP benefits, or medical assistance, MA. So any of those 3 things, they still have to prove it, so they'll need to bring a receipt. Even if their parents are the ones who are receiving that benefit, it will list their names if they're included in those benefits, so that will count as proof of receipt of any of those benefits. So those 3 benefits, they'll be income eligible. If they don't receive those things, they'll need to prove income. If they make $0, that counts as proof of income by filling out this form. And if they make income and they can't prove it, that's what I was going to get to next. If they make money and they don't have any of those things that I listed, they would need to prove residency in Philadelphia, which you guys are already collecting, and an additional barrier. So I will list those. So the additional barriers are the following: school dropout, within age of compulsory school attendance but have not attended in at least the most recent school year calendar, basic skills deficient, English language learner, has a disability, or involved or at risk of involvement, foster care or aging out, homeless or runaway, pregnant or parenting, migrant, or in need of additional assistance to complete education or employment. I'm not going to spend time going over most of this. Again, majority of your young people are not going to need this because they're going to meet the income guidelines. If you have questions about the additional barriers, we're happy to answer them offline, or write it down on a card. We'll collect it and address it later. But if they have income and they cannot prove it, which is again going to be very unlikely, they can submit proof of one of these barriers. And then we just need you guys to sign off with the participant, as I said. And that's about it. When you see the form in front of you, it will be very easy to understand. I know it's hard to see on the screen, but we have attempted to make it as easy as possible for everyone to complete. All right, so I'm going to switch gears and talk about clearance requirements. So again, I mentioned if any applicants to the Work Ready system are going to have direct contact with children, they will need to be cleared. So this should be familiar. This process is not changing. In fact, from Sterling, we have heard it's going to be a little bit easier with all the online codes and things that they get via email. I will not spend time on that today, but hopefully the process runs more smoothly, but the process is the same. So the 3 background checks that they would need to get are an FBI criminal background check, which is waived in some cases, and I'll explain. The state criminal history check, state child abuse clearances, and the forms they'll need, which isn't listed, the signed disclosure statement for employees needs to be filled out by everyone, and then there's a clearance consent form as well, which is not required if they have have already been cleared. So I just want to say, because I mentioned earlier a little bit, that if youth have been cleared previously, they don't need to run through this process again. Does anyone know how recent clearances, how many years we'll accept for clearances? So it's 3 years for participants 14 to 17. It's 5 years for participants over 18. Okay, so now that is based on the program start date. So if your program start date is July 1, just for ease of participation here. So if your program start date is July 1, 2019, and they're 15 years old, but their clearances are on July 2nd from 2016, those won't be counted. If they're anywhere up to June 30th, 2016, and later, those will be used for clearance verification. Okay? Alright, so now we'll get into a little bit more specifics. So there's some differences in youth that are under the age of 18 and youth that are over 18. So again, those clearances are valid for 3 years for 14 to 17 years old. The background checks are the state criminal background check, state child abuse clearance, and FBI. Now FBI clearances are only required if youth are 14 to 17 and have not been a resident of Pennsylvania for 10 years. If they have been, they don't need FBI. If they already have it, that's fine. But if they have not been a resident of Pennsylvania for 10 years and they're under 18, they do not need an FBI clearance. So they're going to fill out a disclosure statement for employees, and that's where they'll indicate I'm 14 to 17 and I've been a resident of PA for 10 years, or I haven't, or I'm over 18. So if they're under 18, that form needs a parent signature. And then there's also the PYN clearance consent form that gives us permission to run their clearances. That's what that form does. So that also needs a parent signature. That's only needed if they're a new applicant for clearances. If they've already received their clearances, we don't need a clearance consent form because they're already cleared.
So if they're already clear, they don't need to hand anything?
They will always need a disclosure statement, regardless. Any applicant, no matter their age, if they need clearances, they need a disclosure statement. But if they've already been cleared, they don't need that clearance consent form because they don't need to give us permission to run their clearances.
Will we be able to know if an applicant was in another program and was cleared?
We're gonna write that question down and we'll circle back to it. So I don't wanna get too derailed with the conversation, so if you guys don't mind just writing questions down and we will come back to them, okay? We'll be here for a little while longer, I promise. And then there's also state child abuse clearance release form that, again, that's from the state, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so they'll need to sign that also with a parent guardian signature. That gives the state clearance to run their, gives the state permission to run their clearances. Okay. So they will register online through Sterling Backcheck if they have never done their clearances before, and they will get online instructions emailed to them. And then results will be emailed back for the state criminal background check, and the child abuse will be delivered via email. FBI fingerprints come in the mail. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't throw it away. Print it out, give it to, make sure they give it to you guys and submit that with their enrollment documents. It comes in the mail, okay? So youth ages 18 and over, not too many differences, only that we can accept 5 years of clearances for 18 and over. They will all need FBI criminal background check. If they require clearances and they're over 18, we need the FBI in addition to the others. If they're under 18 and they didn't live in Pennsylvania, and they lived in Pennsylvania for 10 years, they only need the state and the child abuse. But FBI is required for over 18, for everyone. And they'll need the following forms: the disclosure statement, clearance consent form, and the child abuse release. If they are submitting new clearances. If they are not submitting new clearances, we still need the disclosure statement. Okay. And the only other thing about FBI criminal background check, that gets done in person. So again, they'll receive email instructions, but they go to an approved location. That will be delivered in the email, which locations are approved. Some of them require an appointment. So that will be also delivered in the email. Some of them accept walk-ins, but some of them require an appointment.
These are only folks working with kids.
Correct. Yeah, so young people who are gonna be working with, have direct contact with children, they will require clearances. If you have questions about whether your program requires clearances or not, please ask us offline.
Are these forms gonna be uploaded as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so submission of enrollment files, we've kind of already talked about. It's important for you to make an appointment. We operate under appointments, so it's preferred that you don't just show up with your files, so we can accommodate you. We wanna make sure you set an appointment with your provider specialist. So your provider specialist will usually be the one who's conducting your appointment. However, a lot of our staff are capable of collecting your information and will serve you properly. But you'll make the appointment through the provider specialist regardless of who you're gonna be meeting with. All the information for each individual file should be paper clipped with the quality review checklist on top. And then all of the applications for all the young people that you are submitting should be listed on the enrollment document receipt. Again, sign off on that and then submit that together. So what we're doing this year will be that PYN staff, whoever's conducting your appointment, will use our file tracking system, which I would have loved to show you, but it's not yet up and running. But it will be very cool and it will allow us to have less mistakes made when we're collecting documents that will verify that yes, in fact, you did submit that file to PYN. And once we've confirmed that all those files are submitted or additional documents, we will email you a receipt and then you'll get the paper enrollment document receipt as well. Okay. Again, we need a quality review checklist and an online or paper application to be complete to collect that enrollment file. So file security is pretty straightforward, and I think we all know that we work with sensitive information, right? You have participants' date of birth, you have their social security information, you have their income information, and potentially other barriers to employment, whether that's based on services from foster care or from their having a disability or whatever it is, and that's sensitive to the young person. So we just want to be mindful that that information is kept secure and not left lying around. I know you guys know this because you work with young people, but it's important to note for everyone's purposes what the actual security of files is. It should always be protected, and they should always be kept in a secured, locked room, closet, filing cabinet, what have you. So, things that you don't want to do. I have some tips on the next page. Okay, so you don't want to leave stuff in your car. You don't want to leave things on your desk unattended. When you leave for the day, if you're working with the files, you have them open in front of you, of course, that's fine. But I recommend strongly that you do not leave them open and you walk away, you go out to lunch, you leave for the night, and they're still open to the public, even though I'm sure all of your employees are trained on dealing with this. It's still very important that you keep them locked away at all times when you're not using them. And so you want to keep a copy of the files that you submit to PYN. Those can also be kept digitally at your own organization. But when you're submitting them to PYN, that's why we require you to bring them in by hand. If for whatever reason you arrange with a PYN staff member, whether it's your provider specialist or someone else, that you will be submitting something electronically, do not just send it to us. Arrange it via email and wait for a PYN staff person to send you a secure link. That is very important. Do not just send us electronically information in an attachment, even if it's a spreadsheet, let's just say, with your young people's names, their date of birth, anything that's personally identifiable information, do not just send it to us. Wait for someone to request a secure link for you to use to share that information electronically. And I know that most of you also have some encryption software at your own location. I would recommend that if you're sharing things electronically amongst yourselves, internally, that you use that encryption software. We do it, you guys should do it too. You're dealing with really sensitive information, so it's really important to keep that secure. There's so much insecurity with electronic data these days that we don't want to be doing that for our young people. We want to make sure that they feel safe and comfortable when they're working with us. Okay. And again, you should maintain those files for 7 years. And they can be kept digitally, but paper copy works too.